FIDE Grand Swiss 2021 round number 6 just got completed couple of hours before, and this is the game between Nihal Sarin versus David Navara from the 6th round. As we know that in previous round, in the 5th round, David Navara has just beaten Gukesh from India, which was a very powerful youngster. But this time we have Nihal Sarin against Navara David. Very strong actually, 2650. He's just going in the right direction in the top players board. Okay, so it's a very nice encounter between these two players. So let's check it out. Will Nihal Sarin would be able to take revenge of Gukesh? Okay, so till then, stay tuned and keep watching Chess Vibes. Okay, so Nihal Sarin with the white pieces started the game with 1d4, and David Navara with the black pieces replied with knight to f6. When Nihal played c4, we have g6, knight c3, and now we have d5 by black. So we have the Grunfeld defense on the board. Nihal simply played knight f3, saying that okay, I'm not going for this exchange variation, but I'm going to simply develop my piece to f3. Navara David played bishop g7, and now Nihal captured the pawn on d5. Knight into d5, e4, hitting the knight on d5, knight into c3, b into c3, and now we have c5. So it's a pretty standard variation of the Grunfeld defense. And now we have bishop to b5 check. Knight to c6, castle by white, c into d4, c into d4, castle, bishop into c6, b into c6, and now we have queen to c2 by white. So after queen to c2, we can say that okay, the pawn on d4 is hanging and it is attacked twice. So if black tried to capture the pawn on d4, then white is going to simply play knight into d4, queen into d4, and here white can play bishop e3. And basically the point here is sacrificing a pawn, but we can say the bishop on g7 was the key bishop for black to play in this whole game. And it's actually a very highly dodged position now, because first of all it's an opposite color bishop, second of all that the pawn on c6 is weak, and which leads to an equal position. So definitely David Navara doesn't want to draw. He's a high-rated player. He wants a win. So after queen c2, David Navara played bishop to a6. We have rook to d1. All those who are wondering what will happen if white tries to capture the pawn on c6. You cannot capture the pawn on c6 because the rook is hanging on f1. Okay, so that's the reason. White played rook d1, developing the piece, also protecting the pawn on d4. Black played c5. Stunning move by black. After c5, first of all, white cannot push the pawn because the rook is hanging on a1. So white is having two options. He can capture the pawn on c5 with the queen or with the pawn. So first of all, the most natural move looks to capture with the queen, because it keeps our position very centralized. After queen into c5, black will try to play bishop to e2, a very powerful move, because after rook to d2, bishop into f3, g into f3, we have rook c8 hitting the queen, and if white is greedy, he would capture the pawn on a7, and now black is going to come up with a very nice move. First e5, a very stunning move. After e5, white is going to capture the pawn, which looks the most natural move because white is hitting the queen on d8. But now comes the chance for black. Now black is simply going to play rook into c1 check, rook into c1, queen to g5 check, king f1, queen into d2, and you can just look at the position. Black is simply a piece plus, and it's already winning position for black. That is the reason capturing the pawn on c5 is not a nice idea for white. So after c5, Nihal simply captured the pawn with the d pawn, and after d into c5, it is actually looking a very nice move, because first of all, white have already created a passed pawn. Second, the rook on d1 is hitting the queen on d8. It looks perfect. And perhaps if black tries to defend the queen, like playing on queen c7, then white is going to simply play bishop b2 and trade the bishops from the g7 square, and it's all easy for white. But it turned out that David Navara played a stunning move, which is bishop into a1. He simply sacrificed the queen. He simply captured the rook on a1 and he's saying, okay, come up with all you have got. Just simply capture my queen and I'm happy with 2 rooks for a queen. After bishop into a1, first Nihal played bishop to a6, bishop to h6, hitting the rook, hitting the queen, hitting the bishop. A very crazy position. All those who are wondering what will happen, the most natural move first of all looks like to move the queen. Yep, you can play queen c7, but after queen c7, white can simply play bishop into f8, and after rook into f8, white can simply play rook into a1, and actually white is slightly better because of the c5 pawn. c5 pawn is a passed pawn which gives a minor advantage to white. So which is definitely David Navara doesn't want. So he played a fantastic move, bishop to a8. He simply pulled his bishop back to the last square h8. And after bishop to h8, first of all you cannot go for capturing the rook because after queen into f8, black is already a piece plus. So after bishop a8, Nihal Sarin played rook into d8, capturing up the queen. We have rook f into d8 because you cannot capture with the a rook because the rook is hanging on f8. That's why rook f into d8, h4 by white, bishop to d3, queen to a4 defending the pawn, a6, bishop to g5 hitting the pawn. We have rook c8 hitting the c5 pawn, and now we have bishop into e7 capturing the pawn, hitting the rook and defending the pawn. Rook to e8, bishop to d6, and in this position actually definitely white is having an edge because white is having a queen, and because of the c5 pawn it gives white an advantage. And after bishop to d6 we have bishop into e4, queen into a6, rook to a8, queen to c4 defending the pawn. We have bishop into f3, g into f3, bishop e5, and here white played queen to d5. At the place of playing queen d5, white was having a much nicer move in the position, which was h5, a very strong move. After h5, white is aiming for to play h6, a very powerful move, so that there would be some opportunities for a backrank mate, and definitely the g7 square is terribly weak, so black would try to trade off the bishop. He's going to put the queen on the dark squares and try to checkmate the black queen on g7. It's a very deep process, so that's after h5 black is actually forced to capture the pawn on h5, and after g into h5 white is going to play f4, a very stunning move. After f4 black is kind of forced to trade the bishops, because if black tries to go back to g7 with the bishop, white is having already a very powerful move, c6, simply pushing up the pawn, which is already better for white. So after bishop into d6, c into d6, white is already winning in the position, already better at least because of the d6 pawn, and blacking is just terribly weak. White can get the opportunity to play f5, f6, creating some dark squares issues for the blacking. So, but h5 wasn't played by Nihal, he played queen to d5. We have rook to d8, h5, but now black is on time to play rook to e6. After rook e6, Nihal played h6, but here we have bishop to f4. Capturing up the bishop was also a fine move, because after c into d6, black is going to play king f8, queen d4, rook into d6, queen h8 check, king e7, queen into h7, and black is going to play g5 on time. And now the pawn on h6 is already going to fall. So queen g7, rook into h6, queen into g5 check, king f8, and it's an equal position. So that's why bishop into d6 was not played by David Navara, and he played bishop to f4. White bishop cannot capture the bishop because the rook queen is hanging, and black is already aiming to capture the pawn on h6. So white played queen to b7. We have bishop into h6, and now we have c6 by white. So Nihal Sarin simply looking forward to make a queen, but actually at the place of playing c6, I definitely know that playing c6 is a very tempting move, but a much better move was there to play at the place of c6 was to play bishop to g3, because after bishop g3, now white is preparing to play c6, and yeah, there is, first of all, there is no stopping c6. Yeah, you just can't play rook c8 or rook d6 to stop the c6 idea. So black is actually on time, white is actually on time to push the pawns, and yeah, white is already better. But he played rook c6, which give an advantage, which gives an opportunity to black to capture the bishop on c6, so on d6, because he, after c7, David Navara simply played bishop g5, and he's saying, okay, I'm not afraid, you can capture my bishop, you can capture my rook, and I'm going to simply capture the pawn back, and it's rook versus bishop. I'm going to take a draw. Okay, but Nihal simply played a4. Now he got the opportunity to push his a pawn. Now we have king g7, h5, a5, rook to e8, and now finally Nihal made his second queen. Rook into c8, queen into c8, and David Navara simply played bishop d8 on time to hit the pawn. We have still a6 defending the pawn, and white is still looking forward to make a queen. We have bishop b6, queen b7, rook to f6, king g2, h6, and finally a7 by white. So David Navara is forced to capture the pawn, queen into a7, and after rook f5, queen to d4 check on the move number 40, Nihal, Sarin, and David Navara agreed to a draw. It looks like white simply agreed to a draw, but actually, if you put this position on the engine, it would definitely say that white is having a clearly better position. But it turns out to be black is having a very nice fortress, because first of all, white is having the same pawns on the f4, f file, and second, black is having a very nice pawn chain on this fg and h file, which gives a very nice chance for black to create a fortress. So there is no way white can take this game. Yep. So this was the reason after move number 14, Sarin and David Navara with the black pieces and with the white pieces agreed to a draw. Fantastic game played by both the players. A very minimum blunder were played by both the players. So if you ever want to play Grunfeld defense, you can definitely learn from this game. And even if you are looking for a weapon against Grunfeld defense, this is the best weapon, you can say. Yeah, Nihal Sarin just showed us what can be the best reply to play against this Grunfeld defense. So if you like, first of all, if you like this game, then please make sure to like this video, and if you are new to my channel, then make sure to subscribe the channel, because it motivates me to upload new videos like this. And yep, so keep sharing this video, and I'm going to see you next time. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Chess Vibes.